From a girl kidnapped at birth and raised in a government laboratory as test subject 011 to a teenager who still can't escape people trying to control her powers and her life. In this video, we're breaking down why being born as Jane Ives, better known as 11 from Stranger Things, means a childhood stolen by experiments, a life hunted by monsters, and trauma that never stops coming. First up, we got stolen at birth. 11 was kidnapped immediately after birth by Dr. Martin Brenner and raised as a government test subject with no knowledge of her real mother. Jane Ives was born on June 7, 1971, to Terry Ives. Her mother Terry was a volunteer in Project MKUltra, a controversial government program involving experiments with psychedelic drugs and sensory deprivation. During these experiments at Hawkins National Laboratory, Terry mysteriously became pregnant. Terry's exposure to MKUltra experiments during pregnancy is implied to have influenced 11's abilities. Dr. Martin Brenner was present at the birth and immediately took the newborn baby. Brenner covered up Jane's kidnapping by reporting her as a miscarriage. Terry filed a lawsuit against Brenner and his associates, but lost due to lack of evidence. When Terry later tried to force her way into Hawkins' lab with a gun to retrieve her daughter, Terry was forcibly subjected to electroshock treatment by Hawkins' lab, leaving her in a permanent catatonic state where she could only repeat the words, breathe, sunflower, rainbow, 450, 3 to the right, 4 to the left, over and over. Being kidnapped at birth meant 11 never had a normal childhood. 11 was raised in strict isolation with no sign of a normal childhood, just cold laboratory walls and a man calling himself Papa who was actually running experiments on her. Terry spent years in a vegetative state, unable to communicate what happened to her daughter.
Growing up, 11 didn't even know her birth name was Jane. She was simply 011, a number tattooed on her forearm, like livestock. The cover-up was perfect. 11 legally didn't exist. No one was looking for her because, officially, she had never been born. Before we continue, if you're interested in seeing how a fictional character's childhood compares to real serial killers, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And things only got worse once she was old enough to understand what was happening to her. 11 spent her entire childhood locked inside Hawkins National Laboratory, undergoing experiments designed to push her psychic powers to their limits. Growing up at Hawkins Lab, Jane was redesignated as 11, being the 11th in Brenner's series of child test subjects. She was completely denied access to the outside world. Brenner built himself up as a father figure, establishing a tender demeanor when in her presence, but an unstated threat lurked beneath even his most affectionate words. If 11 attempted to defy Brenner's orders, she would be locked in a cramped room as punishment, potentially for hours on end. These painful experiences led her to develop severe claustrophobia. Brenner manipulated the children and created a rigid punishment system, often reinforcing 11's dependence on him. Brenner subjected 11 to at least 4 stages of experimentation. First, attempts to demonstrate telekinesis by crushing a soda can with her mind. Second, using her powers to manipulate living creatures, with 11 refusing to cause a cat to harm itself. Third, experiments to listen remotely to conversations at great distances. Fourth, attempts to amplify her powers by placing her in a sensory deprivation tank. The room in the lab's underground complex contained this tank used to enhance her psychic powers. The sensory deprivation chambers were designed to push 11 deeper into the void and amplify her psychic projection. When sensorily deprived, 11 could become immersed in an inner mental void where she could project her consciousness and psychically reach out to other living creatures. 11's childhood consisted of being tested like a lab rat. Brenner controlled every aspect of her life: when she ate, what she wore, who she interacted with, what experiments she endured. The sensory deprivation tank isolated her in complete darkness and silence to force her mind into a psychic state. Brenner encouraged her to do well and quickly punished the other kids when they bullied her. But this wasn't parental love. This was a researcher protecting his most valuable test subject. The experiments involving living creatures show how young she was during testing. Making a child hurt a cat to see if she would obey orders. Refusing meant punishment in that cramped isolation room. Now imagine growing up like that and then watching your siblings get murdered. On September 8, 1979, 8-year-old 11 witnessed the brutal massacre of nearly all the other child test subjects and multiple lab staff members at Hawkins Laboratory. In September 1979, 11 struggled during training exercises. On September 4th, Brenner took 11 and the other subjects into the main training room, where children would attempt to psychically manipulate light bulbs. 11 struggled with this task, leading the oldest child, 2, to mock and belittle her. Despite this, 11 briefly powered one of the bulbs.
On September 7th, Brenner pitted the children against each other in combat-based tests, where 2 children stood on mats, trying to psychically push their opponent off. 11 ultimately defeated 2, humiliating him. Later that day, 2 and his allies, 3, 4, and 5,
ganged up on 11 in the Rainbow Room while cameras were off, bullying her with their powers and threatening to kill her. A friendly orderly advised 11 to use negative emotions like anger and sadness to better channel her abilities. On September 8th, this orderly, who was actually Henry Creel, also known as 1, the lab's original test subject, manipulated 11 into removing a device from his neck that suppressed his powers. With his abilities restored, Henry committed a massacre throughout the laboratory, killing nearly all the other test subjects and various Hawkins lab personnel. 11 entered the Rainbow Room and watched in horror as 1 telekinetically pinned 2 against a wall, crushing his neck and dropping his corpse to the floor. 1 attempted to convince 11 to join him in eradicating humanity. When she refused, they fought. Element overpowered him and sent him through a temporary gate to another dimension, the Upside Down, where he would eventually transform into Vecna. 11 was 8 years old, 8, and she witnessed nearly all the other child test subjects slaughtered during the 1979 massacre. 2, who had bullied her, 3, 4, 5, all murdered. Dead bodies everywhere, blood on the walls. A friendly orderly she trusted, revealing himself as a mass murderer trying to recruit her to help destroy humanity. Then she had to fight him herself, creating the first gate to the Upside Down and accidentally turning him into the monster Vecna. The psychological trauma of watching that massacre would destroy most adults. 11 was a child. Following the incident, she suffered a coma and became somewhat amnesiac, with her powers blunted and memories repressed. But the nightmare was just getting started, because that massacre led to even worse experiments. 4 years after the 1979 massacre, Dr. Brenner pushed 11 to make psychic contact with a creature from another dimension,
accidentally opening a gateway to the Upside Down. On an unspecified date, likely in 1983, 11 was lowered into the sensory deprivation tank before entering her void. She succeeded in finding a Russian agent, the task Brenner assigned her, but she unwittingly encountered a creature from another dimension, the Demogorgon. 11's psychic contact produced audio feedback that shocked the lab staff. 11 panicked, and the experiment was aborted, but Brenner remained intrigued by the creature. Brenner decided to repeat the experiment, ordering 11 to make contact with the creature. On November 6, 1983, 11 entered the tank once again. Immersed in the psychic state, 11 reluctantly made contact with the creature while it fed off a large yellow egg. In the moment contact was established, a second gate cracked open in the wall of the tank room, invoking panic and confusion among the scientists. In the ensuing chaos, 11 escaped the lab through the basement's drain pipe and fled into the surrounding woodlands of Hawkins. Brenner forced 11 to touch a monster from another dimension. When she panicked, he didn't stop the experiments. He made her do it again. That second contact ripped open a gateway between dimensions that unleashed the Demogorgon into Hawkins. Will Byers was taken to the Upside Down, Barbara Holland was killed. Multiple people died, and it was because Brenner forced a traumatized child to psychically connect with an interdimensional monster. 11 knew the creature was dangerous. She panicked the first time. Brenner didn't care. He wanted data. So what do you do when you've been experimented on your whole life and you finally escape? You get hunted. After escaping Hawkins' laboratory wearing only a hospital gown, 11 was hunted by government agents who murdered the first person who tried to help her. Walking through the woods on November 7, 1983, 11 came across Benny Hammond's diner and attempted to steal food. Benny caught her and prevented her escape. He clothed, fed, and attempted to communicate with her. She was reserved and didn't say much, but eventually revealed her name was 11 by pointing to the 011 tattoo on her forearm. Thinking she was a victim of child abuse, Benny called social services. Hawkins Lab's monitoring room listened in on the call, prompting Brenner to travel to the diner. Agent Connie Frazier, posing as a social worker, arrived instead. She shot and killed Benny, while other agents chased 11. Hawkins National Laboratory manipulated the scene to make it look like suicide. 11 ran into the woods where she was found by Mike Wheeler, Dustin Henderson, and Lucas Sinclair, who were searching for their missing friend Will Byers. The first person who showed 11 kindness outside the lab was murdered for helping her. Benny fed her, gave her a shirt, tried to get her help, and Brenner had him killed. The government agents staged it as a suicide. 11 watched them chase her through the diner. She ran into the woods wearing just Benny's shirt and her hospital gown, alone, scared, hunted. This taught her that trying to connect with people outside the lab got them killed, that seeking help brought death. Mike and his friends found her by accident during their search for Will, and she hid from them initially because the last adult who tried to help her had been murdered right in front of her. Drop a comment below and let me know. Would you risk your life to help a scared kid on the run? Finally, having friends in a safe place didn't last long. Between 1983 and 1986, Eleven was repeatedly forced to use her powers to fight interdimensional monsters as a young teenager, often pushing herself to physical collapse and severe injury. After being found by Mike, Lucas, and Dustin, Eleven helped them search for Will. Upon discovering her abilities, Mike believed she could help find Will, their missing friend. During their time together, she and Mike formed a strong bond and quickly grew to like each other. In an attempt to protect her friends, Eleven eventually destroyed the Demogorgon she had unleashed in a showdown at Hawkins Middle School, mysteriously vanishing in the process. Every time Eleven used her powers to a significant degree, she became temporarily weakened, and her nose bled. The more she pushed her abilities, the worse the physical toll. When she defeated the Demogorgon, she disappeared entirely, ending up in the Upside Down. In 1984, she returned to Hawkins' lab and successfully used her powers to close the gate while fighting off Demodogs. The strain was enormous. In 1985, during the Battle of Starcourt, the Mind Flayer grabbed Eleven's leg and left something inside her. Jonathan cut the wound open, and Eleven used her powers to force the creature fragment out, screaming in pain as glass windows shattered. After removing the Mind Flayer fragment from her leg, Eleven's powers disappeared, for reasons the show doesn't fully explain. Eleven fought threats from the Upside Down repeatedly as a young teenager, fighting monsters that terrified grown adults. Each time she used her powers, blood poured from her nose, severe nosebleeds. Sometimes she passed out from exhaustion. Sometimes she collapsed. When she closed the gate, the physical strain nearly killed her, and everyone expected her to do this. Her friends needed her powers. Hopper needed her powers. Hawkins needed her powers. Nobody asked if she wanted to fight monsters. They just expected her to, because she could. When the Mind Flayer bit her leg in 1985, that piece of monster lodged in her wound. The strain of forcing it out was so severe, she never recovered her powers.
Now imagine losing the only abilities that ever protected you and moving to a new school.
After losing her powers, Eleven relocated to California, where she was viciously bullied by classmates who mocked her dead father and filmed her humiliation. After Hopper's apparent death, Eleven was taken in by the Byers family and relocated to Lenora Hills, California, under Dr. Sam Owens' supervision. She struggled to adjust to her new life, especially living without her powers while being a target for bullies. By spring 1986, Eleven enrolled at Lenora Hills High School as a freshman, using her birth name Jane. A popular student named Angela and her boyfriend Jake began making her life miserable, taking advantage of her shy nature. On March 21st, the last day of school before spring break, each student in Angela's history class gave an oral presentation about a historical hero using a visual aid. When Eleven attempted to present her diorama of her father Jim Hopper, Jake blew a spitball at her, and Angela mocked her, causing the class to laugh. Eleven described Hopper as a hero, but Angela belittled her intelligence and made fun of her presumably deceased father. After class, Angela tripped Eleven in the courtyard, causing her project to break. Their teacher took Angela to the principal's office, leading Angela to call Eleven the school snitch. The next day, at Rinkomania roller skating rink, Angela and her friends brought Eleven to the center of the rink, filmed her on camera, dumped a milkshake on her, and made her fall. This was the worst public humiliation any of the Hawkins kids had faced. Eleven attacked Angela with a skate and was arrested, with Angela suffering a grade 2 concussion. Eleven spent her entire childhood being experimented on and fighting monsters. She finally got away from Hawkins. She finally had a chance at a normal life, and high school was worse than the lab. Angela was cruel in ways Dr. Brenner never was. Brenner manipulated her, but Angela mocked her dead father for entertainment, filmed her humiliation to share with everyone, dumped food on her in front of a crowd. The worst part is, Eleven had no powers to defend herself. Her entire life, when bad things happened, she could at least fight back. Not anymore. She was powerless, vulnerable, just a regular kid being tormented. And she snapped, hit Angela with a roller skate hard enough to cause a concussion, got arrested. The one time she tried to defend herself without powers, she got taken into police custody. But Brenner wasn't done with her yet. In 1986, Dr. Brenner, previously believed dead, reappeared and forced Eleven back into experiments designed to restore her powers through reliving traumatic memories. On March 22, 1986, Dr. Sam Owens tracked down Eleven, and convinced her to participate in the Nina Project, a scheme he created with Dr. Brenner designed to restore her powers. 11 traveled to a facility in Nevada and discovered to her horror that Brenner, previously believed dead after the 1983 Demogorgon attack, had reappeared, alive, with no explanation given. 11 fearfully attempted to flee the base, but Brenner ordered her to be forcefully sedated and placed into the Nina tank, where Brenner forced her to relive traumatic memories. While inside, she was exposed to audio-visual stimuli from Hawkins National Laboratory in 1979 via old CCTV tapes playing on various screens. Brenner explained her powers were lost like a stroke victim loses the ability to walk, with signals scrambled. He claimed she needed to relive her memories to remember how to use her abilities. As part of the process, 11 re-experienced her repressed memories from when she was 7 and 8 years old at Hawkins' lab.
She remembered Henry Creel was responsible for the 1979 massacre and that she had fought and banished him to the Upside Down. This brought back the full trauma of watching nearly all the other children die. Brenner came back, and the first thing he did was drug 11 and force her into a sensory deprivation tank against her will. Same experiments, same manipulation, same Papa calling her his daughter while treating her like a test subject. The Nina Project made her relive the worst day of her life, made her watch the massacre again, made her remember fighting one, made her remember creating Vecna. All that repressed trauma came flooding back because Brenner needed her powers restored. He didn't care about her mental health. He cared about having his weapon back. Even when military forces attacked the facility and Brenner was shot, dying, he unlocked her collar and told her they were family. 11 refused to forgive him before he died. Being born as 11 meant never having a chance at a normal life. Kidnapped at birth, mother left brain damaged, raised as test subject 011 in a government laboratory with no knowledge of the outside world. Spent childhood undergoing sensory deprivation and psychological experiments designed to weaponize psychic abilities. Witnessed nearly all the other child test subjects brutally murdered at age 8. Forced to fight the killer herself, accidentally creating the gateway that unleashed monsters into Hawkins. Pushed to make psychic contact with interdimensional creatures despite obvious terror. Escaped only to watch the first person who helped her get murdered by government agents. Spent teenage years fighting Demogorgons, Demodogs, and the Mind Flayer, suffering severe physical trauma each time. Lost her powers after a monster lodged itself in her leg. Relocated to California where vicious bullies mocked her dead father and filmed her humiliation. Arrested for defending herself. Drugged and forced back into experiments by the man who stole her childhood. Made to relive her worst trauma to restore powers needed to fight yet another monster. Every time 11 tried to have something normal, friends, family, school, life, monsters or manipulators destroyed it. Her childhood was stolen by experiments. Her teenage years were consumed by fighting interdimensional threats. Her powers made her valuable, which made her a target. Losing her powers made her vulnerable, which made her a victim. She couldn't win. Being born with extraordinary abilities in a world hunting those abilities means never escaping exploitation. 11 shows what happens when a child's value comes solely from what they can do for others. Brenner valued her as a weapon. Her friends valued her as protection. The government valued her as an asset. Nobody valued her as Jane, a girl who just wanted egos and friendship. If 11 had been born without powers, Terry might have raised her. She would have had a mother, a childhood, a life. If 11 had been born in a different time, Brenner couldn't have kidnapped her. If 11 had been born anywhere else, Hawkins' lab wouldn't have found her. But she was born with powers, in 1971, to an MK-Ultra test subject. And that meant her life was decided before she took her first breath. One girl born at the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong abilities. And that made her childhood a laboratory, made her teenage years a battlefield, made her entire existence a weapon other people wielded. If you enjoyed this breakdown of why 11's life is uniquely awful from the moment she was born, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video.